A little while ago, Cola won CEO 2024 against Riddles, and it got me thinking because I wanted to be optimistic and wonder if this was a possible new way to move on from the campy meta we have going on and be all like, yo, whoa guys, is this the new way to beat Steve? But I mean, that's too much to ask. Like, not anyone can play hyper aggressive like Roy, and more importantly, like Cola can. And even so, I mean, the way he played was super risky, so like, things can always go really wrong really fast if you mess up once. Still, I think Roy and Cola are a perfect match. He has some serious fundies, he knows exactly what he's doing. He puts all his eggs in one basket, which I guess sounds like optimal Roy, and he is just doing such an amazing job with him in a meta where Roy and Roy-like playstyles appear to be a little bit less common than they were a couple years ago. I'm not saying camping is all we have right now though, because that's not true. I still think competitive Smash is fun to watch, lots of players in the current top ranking still have some dignity left, but you get what I mean. Characters that can approach less but still end your stock off a couple wins in neutral have been showing up a lot more recently, and yeah, alright, moving on. So now I want to talk about how Cola handles fighting against these top tier threats who all share the trait of greatly benefiting off impatient opponents. They don't necessarily struggle approaching, but they much prefer being approached rather than approaching themselves and then land soul-crushing punishes because I don't know, it's just how it is. It's not only the camping that makes these fights difficult, but these fighters also have great ways to force approaches and condition bad habits like reflectors, projectiles, random intangibility, or the threat of timing you out. So camping them back is hardly an option, especially for Cola. Why especially for Cola? Well, Roy can kill really early, he's super fast, he has amazing frame data, good cheese, good combos, all around a great example of a high tier, rush down character that isn't too difficult to learn and consistently rewards up close aggression. There are of course a bunch of aggressive players in the top ranks. For example, I'm thinking of Omega or Sonic if he played Sonic in a way that didn't make God turn his back on us, and also Light, and his main Fox also plays up close, but Fox can afford to take his time approaching more thanks to his projectiles and his reflector, while in Roy's case, if you don't want to approach him for whatever reason, he has to come to you. Granted, he does have good movement to help him out, and he is greatly rewarded when he does manage to get in, which sounds cool and fun, and usually isn't that big of a problem for him, but being restricted to one playstyle can be a big detriment sometimes, and in this case, it's exactly the kind of weakness characters like Steve, Kazuya, Sonic, and Game & Watch want from you, regardless of how good your frame data is. So at a glance, you'd assume that these matchups can be good for Roy, but also really risky. And you'd be right, Cola and Goblin still believe some of these matchups to be positive for Roy, and that's likely because his offenses can be really hard to escape from, and also thanks to his amazing speed and frame data, Cola can almost afford to mash combo starters like jab and falling up air and not get punished for it if it gets blocked. Almost.
Right there.
He's gonna be able to clip him by the ledge. He comes right back though. Talk about the damage.
Not just damage, but the terrible positioning, and just like that, Riku clutching up.
I'm gonna be talking about his recent fights against characters that we've all been seeing a little too much recently and how he's managed to push through their defenses. I'm not saying this is the new way to beat the current meta. You have to play perfectly for this to work, and for anyone that doesn't have airtight offenses, or if your main is someone that has an easier, safer time when approaching, I don't recommend this. But when you're Roy, what other choice do you have, right? Alright, this is the big one. I'm not gonna cover the entire thing like I did in my EVO 2019 video. All you gotta know right now is that even though the world's top Roys believe the matchup to be slightly in favor of them, Kazuya is still a touch of death character regardless of the matchup. If you whiff something on him, things can go super wrong, and Riddles isn't someone who forgives whiffed approaches. This man plays Kazuya on a whole new level, so alright, let's get into the set. Instantly on game 1, Riddles lets Cola know that he best be quick on his feet or he's gonna eat shit. Even someone with frame data as amazing as Roy can't afford to be whiffing that much on him and hitting his shield a lot, and he gets low percent 2-stuck, holy shit. In game 2, Riddles does not let up. Cola had already beaten him during the winner's final set, so I'm guessing he had some time to think a little more about this matchup. During that set, Riddles realized that if he wants to win here, he has to stop playing bait and punish and start scrapping more. But even after these crazy punishes, Cola doubled down on almost reckless aggression. Kazuya might be a higher tier character and he may have a scarier advantage state, but close quarter scrapping is something Roy does do better in. So right after respawning, Cola starts mashing jab. Like, no, I don't care that you only need 1 or 2 openings to win. I'm built different, eat this jab. And then he gets good damage, but he still dies again. And he loses game 2. So yeah, like I said, the strategy is way risky, but I guess Cola didn't have much of a choice unless he wanted to switch to his Cloud. Look at these whiffs on game 3. Like, he is really taking advantage of every frame Roy can spare to avoid getting punished. This whole sequence was insanely greedy, but like in a fun way, and he just keeps pressing buttons on him, keeping him at disadvantage for as long as he can, doing his best to avoid giving Riddles the chance to reset to neutral. He knows what Kazuya can do when you start respecting his space and playing his game, so he can't let him escape, and he has to get the most out of any opening he gets, and this time it worked, but Riddle still managed to reset the bracket in game 4. So now anyone who's watching this set live is like, Cole is being too reckless, he needs to be more careful when approaching, he has to respect Kazuya's burst range, maybe swap to Cloud, but Cola continues to double down. In the first game of True Finals, Cola whiffs one hit of side B and loses a stock, but he doesn't let up the pressure and he doesn't let that get to him and wins after finding one opening and not letting Riddles go. And I'm just gonna emphasize the main thing that I want to show you here, which is this man rarely steps back to think and assess the situation, right? No matter the risk, he is locked into full offense mode, and sometimes it goes really well and sometimes it goes really badly. Riddles is doing his best to punish these approaches, and often they go well and they net him good damage and stocks, but the Roy pressure is too dominant and it's actually kind of hypnotizing to watch. Like, I'm staring at this set looking to find good examples of how risky Cole is playing here to show you guys and put it in the video, but I just keep getting lost in the sauce, man. These stocks are disappearing faster than my faith in Mexican democracy. Okay, so Cola is a full stock behind, he's on his last stock. Usually people play it safer when they're on their last stock because they have less room to make mistakes, but I mean, you saw the video's thumbnail, right? This set was insane. Props to both players for giving us an amazing show, as they always do. Anyone could have won this set, but these last two stocks were total domination from Cola. Riddles is a really smart player, so obviously it must have taken a lot of energy and perfect execution to get him to air dodge into an F smash here. I know Cola isn't the first player to go full offense against the Kazuya, but right now this is the highest level example of this that we have, and it takes a lot of ball sacks to rush in against someone who loves it when his opponents get a little bit too reckless, so that was cool. Alright, this next set is Cola against Riku, a Steve player from Florida. And Steve is a very dangerous character even if this matchup is supposedly even, according to both the Steve and Roy player bases, but like with Kazuya, touch of death, broken character, annoying, you still need to be super careful not to give him an opportunity because you will eat at least 50% or lose a stock. Don't believe me? This is how the first 5 seconds of the set went.
Either way, let's get into it. Roy, honest, high tier character, taking 55%, 70%.
This set was kind of different than the one against Riddles. While Kazuya prefers whiff punishing and benefits from good footsies, Steve's love to just step back and stop playing the game to mine up a bunch of materials and then be ready to punish their opponents as they break the walls. Cola was a little more careful here. We saw him mostly focus on stage control, but whenever he had Riku at a tight spot like with Riddles, he would do his best to not let his positioning go. He does get a little greedy and does the scrub counter along with a bunch of spot dodges, Elite Smash style, but overall, at least in this game 1, we didn't see a lot of crazy punishes from Riku, likely due to great footsies from Cola, because it's just really hard to find an opening against someone who's always on the move, right? But any set involving a Steve would be incomplete without some ridiculous punishes, so we do see a bunch of those. But Cola does do his best to answer back and almost gets a really good spike here on game 2 if it wasn't for this block, and I guess this is just a good example of how naturally aggression comes to Cola's mind. By the looks of it, he feels very free and very in touch with Roy and what he can follow up with as soon as he lands a hit, which of course does help him out a lot in a matchup where you want your opponent to touch the ground as little as possible. On the other hand, Steve is still broken. And remember at the start of the video when I said this approach can either go super well or super badly? Well, game 2 of this was a low percent 2-stock by Cola, but next game, he gets 3-stocked. That's how polarizing this game plan is. Again, something interesting we see with Steve a lot is that they're always ready to punish players breaking their walls. So ideally, when you're approaching him, you should be thinking about how he's gonna try to catch you. And Cola's like poking these walls and running away instantly, which is really smart because there were a few times where Cola was fast enough to scoot back and punish Riku instead of the other way around. And due to this aggression, only in game 4 do we start seeing Riku successfully wall himself off. That's kind of huge because we know Steve's love to hide behind the blocks, but Cola's offense was too overwhelming for him to find a chance to do it, and even when he does do it, it seems like Cole is super ready to deal with them, but also even respect the TNT when he has to, which is the first time we see him just standing there without moving. But also he does this without giving the aggression up when Riku decides to start playing the game again. In the end, Cola took the set. There were some devastating Steve moments, but also some very sexual Roy action because, well, that's the strat, right? Either things go super well or you get styled on by the funny block man pressing the same button 10 times in a row. This set was against Taikei, sorry if I mispronounced that, but he is one of the best Sonic players in Japan, and I'll be real, this is just classic Roy gameplay. Against Sonic, finding an opening is very difficult, especially if they know the vibes, and even for someone as fast as Roy. But I decided to talk about this set anyway because this is a rare sighting of Cola standing still, not approaching, just thinking. Obviously, Cola is still Cola. Whenever he finds an opportunity, he does all he can to extend it, even if it ends up being a greedy thing to do. Because like we've seen before, a good Roy string can go a long way, but Sonic has some crazy combos too, and he has good ways to escape disadvantage, so you still need to respect him, especially since Roy's recovery can be easy to beat, and the rest of his disadvantage is kinda stinky. Sonic's punishes aren't as ridiculous as Steve's or Kazuya's, so the stakes are a bit lower. But again, I just want to show you guys how an aggressive player like Cola can handle passive playstyles. This set against Taikei was interesting because Steve and Kazuya don't exactly play like Sonic. Sure, the three of them love baiting and punishing, but Sonic does this with his overwhelming speed and solid punish game, in contrast to these two's decent enough mobility but absolutely racist punish game, so the approach is different. In my previous examples, I talked about them because it was interesting to see Cola not respect his opponent's strengths and just get in, but he actually did sort of play Sonic's game here, but with a pinch of Roy's I'm gonna hang on to this advantage state for as long as possible kind of style. I don't know, video's over. I just wanted to explore how rushdowns with mediocre range can keep getting results when the meta right now seems to revolve around defense and the punish game. I think Cola's doing a really good job in the Fighters Pass 2 era because I thought the counterplay was to play lame and break your controller trying to SDI out of combos, but I don't know, this seems like a more fun way to fight. But again, like I did mention this before, but I don't want to act like this is the play for everyone. You gotta remember that these characters are still really good even without the ability to camp, and even if they weren't, Cola is still not even completely negating it anyway. Like even if he was to fully scare Riku out of walling himself out, or completely make Taika and Riddle start approaching more, and they had to remove not approaching from their game plan, he's not out of the woods yet. Again, these characters are still really good and the matchup doesn't become magically free just because camping isn't as easy anymore. But the main reason people hate fighting these three, and I guess one of the main reasons these three are up here on the tier list, is they are really annoying when they camp, and Cola seems to have found a way to make his opponents have to rely on that less. Cola has lost plenty of sets against these characters too, but he's definitely been racking up recently, and it's so cool that he's been doing it with a character that is essentially a big middle finger to the meta. Sorry if this video is kind of all over the place, I'm not always the best at scripting longer videos, but if you did enjoy, make sure to drop a hot subby if you want to see more of this stuff, and leave a comment if you want me to go over any set you think is fun, because I love going into all sorts of details in this game, and I don't know, that's it, bye.